Today, we are going to be talking about whether we approach the Bible, whether you approach the Bible as a humanist or as a Christian. And even if you are a Christian, you might be approaching the Bible more like a humanist than you realize. We're going to go into that. We're also going to be talking about obstacles that I've been facing in my life. I'm going to talk about some of my reflections on 2022 and how that has been a wrestle. And then finally, I'm going to answer one of your questions about how we know if our decisions are made as a humanist or as a Christian. I talked recently about decision making, a humanist versus a Christian perspective on decision making. And I'm going to share a very easy question that you can answer that will help you determine whether you've made a decision as a humanist or as a Christian. Because honestly, you can make the same decision. It's not about what decision you make, it's about how you make it. That's what makes the difference. So make sure you watch till the end of the show to hear how to do that. But I am wanting just to share a little bit of an update on me and where the channel's at. As we get into 2023, I'm going to be jumping into more and more videos like this, longer videos that are going to be hopefully back and forth conversations. I would love to get input from you guys. What do you think about this whole debate between humanist and Christianity, especially if you are a Christian? I would love to hear your thoughts on some of these topics. But I'm wanting also to begin to develop more and more opportunities for community off the channel. One of those is Patreon. Go over there and check out. I've started a Patreon. I'll put links below to that so you can consider joining my team to support what we're doing here on YouTube. And part of the perks of that is I'm going to be posting more and more content only on Patreon, some where you have to be a Patreon to see it, others that anyone can see. And soon I'll be launching a Discord channel where we can do more chatting together and have more conversation. Here we are in January 2023. I am still waiting on our fifth. My wife is waiting more than me. Natasha is 9 months pregnant. She's due January 18th. So any day now, she's basically ready to go. She's ready to be done being pregnant, which I totally get. And we're jumping into a new year. It's exciting. Lots happening with our work with YWAM. And if you are a long time tracker with this channel, I wanted to recommend a channel to you. My friend Joel McGill, I've been helping him launch his channel, and we've recorded several courses that he has that have been really impactful to me. I'll link to his channel below, but go check those out. That's one of the things I've been working on and will be working on more this year. So if you want to follow what I'm doing on YouTube, that's one of the places you can see it, is on his channel. And let's see, I'm going to be doing more lives here. So let me know if you have a time. If you're interested in joining for the lives, let me know if like mornings or evenings are better for you, afternoons. I'm trying to figure out when to do those lives. Right now I'm recording them here in advance because I'm still figuring out audio. But once I get that figured out, we'll be doing these shows live. I'm excited about that. So let's talk about it. How do you read the Bible? Do you read it like a humanist or do you read it like a Christian? Am I in focus? I gotta get myself back on track here. There we go. I'm in focus now. So what is humanism? Humanism is, I like to define it as, in two words, as trusts self or trusts men. Whether that's trusting yourself or trusting the collective of humanity. You believe that we can find the solutions to our problems through our own hard work, ingenuity, through our own, in ourselves. We can discover the right way to be human, the right way to live. This is much more of a common worldview than we realize, and it's actually super common among Christians. I believe it's one of the biggest obstacles facing Christians today. You could call it the spirit of the Antichrist. It's opposition to the reality of God as Lord, Jesus as Lord, and it basically elevates our own thinking, reasoning, and it's been sort of embedded in the whole journey of humanity since the garden, but we embraced it and defined it in the Enlightenment period in the 16 and 1700s. And during that time period, we saw a rejection of the idea that the Bible was simply a divine text that God gave us, and that we should just accept it as a whole, that we should believe what it says. And sort of attached to this idea of the Bible being divinely inspired was also the idea that the Catholic Church was instated by God. The Catholic Church was interpreting themselves as the authority to interpret the Bible, and they were in a lot of ways operating not in a focus on the text as a source of truth, but really as the church as the source of truth. And subsequently, there was political power connected to this, the idea of the divine right of kings. So the use of the Bible was in a poor state, and Enlightenment thinkers decided, you know what, let's not take the Bible as a divinely inspired text and just say, well, we believe whatever it says is true. Some of this was in questioning the miracles of Jesus, the divinity of Jesus. Some of it was in questioning whether Moses actually wrote the Pentateuch. This is where biblical criticism got its start. In this time period, religious leaders really rejected humanism and saw it as a very negative thing. And it was a small movement. It wasn't like everybody became a humanist overnight. But it began to erode at the overall trust of the Bible as a divinely inspired text. So what does that look like today? We're now several hundred years later, 500 years later. We now are looking at the same text, but as Christians, we've become more and more humanist in our thinking. What is humanism according to a humanist in the Enlightenment period? Well, it's belief in or trust in your own understanding. Don't believe what someone else tells you to believe. Believe what makes sense to you. Use your own understanding. Immanuel Kant said it had a heavy value and placed a heavy weight on reasoning, that we weren't going to get to truth through some revelation from heaven. We were going to get to truth through mental push-ups, through really thinking through stuff. If we would just really use our mental capacity, we could get to a place where we understand the universal truth. And there was a belief in universal truth. This isn't postmodernism where it was go for your own truth. The belief was that we can discover what's true about the world as we work together and think together. And this was, again, in contrast to the idea of the Bible being inspired by God. What does that look like today? Well, we see today a modern day humanist that's become very popular, Jordan Peterson. I do like Jordan Peterson in some regards. I think there's some positive things he brings to the conversation, but he is a humanist. He does not look at the text as a divinely inspired text. He does not believe necessarily in the resurrection of Jesus. He's confused and wrestles through these things, that he's trying to make sense of them. This is not the way that a Christian approaches the text. Jordan approaches the text as someone who's saying, how good are these ideas? Do these ideas have merit? Do the things of the text say, do they make sense to me? And this is what a humanist does. They look around the world and they try and get information through experience, through other people, through debate, through thought. We can collect all this information and process it, and in the end come out with truth. This is a humanist approach to the Bible, and many of us actually find ourselves there. I remember years ago being in a Bible study where they required us to read the text for the Bible study, I think 4 or 5 times, or maybe once a day over the course of the week, if you even wanted to come to the Bible study. And I remember having a long period of time where in the Bible study, we couldn't share what we thought the text meant. We could only share what the text said. And I remember feeling like this is exactly what we should do. I don't know why. Looking back on it now, I can realize it's because most of us, when we study the Bible, we're actually approaching it from this argument, opinion, share your thoughts. And a humanist would say, if you've got a thought, you should share it. Maybe you've got this spark, and if we can get you to share that spark, we can all mull it over and think it through and maybe end up with the truth. This is not how the Bible approaches truth, or how God talks about truth to us. One of the clearest texts on this is 1 Corinthians 1 and 2. I'm going to pull that up now, and we're going to look at what Paul has to say about this way of thinking. The context is he's talking about divisions in the church, and he's saying, you can't say I follow Paul, I follow Apollos. is there divisions among you? You're all supposed to be following Christ. And he says this, he says, for the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to those who are being saved is the power of God. And in verse 20, he says, where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. The idea here is that the wise person, the scribe, or this person who's studying, who knows the Bible the best, the debater of this age, God has thwarted them. God has stopped them from understanding truth. Even in verse 19, it says, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. What we see here is that God is not delivering truth to us from some process of reasoning. He's not explaining to us what's right, what's true. He's actually thwarting this reasoning process. He's thwarting this wisdom in ourselves, discernment, debate in ourselves. This isn't how we get to truth. We get to it through wisdom preached. And, this is in verse 27, God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human might boast in the presence of God. God is intending to deliver truth to us in a way that's frustrating to our own intellect, that's frustrating to our own reasoning. And this is how he intends for us to read the scriptures. Jesus says that the Spirit will come, he will reveal truth to us, he will explain everything to us. We are meant to have the text illuminated to us by the Spirit. This is the way that we should approach the Bible. A Jeremiah 33:3 approach where he says, call to me and I will answer you and I will show you, reveal to you, not explain, I will show to you great and unsearchable things that you do not know. These things that he wants to show us aren't searchable. We can't figure them out. We can't reason, process, figure out what they mean. We have to call out to him and let him show these great and unsearchable things to us. So, do you approach the Bible like Jordan Peterson, like a humanist, where you say, you know what? This idea, this resonates with me. I like this. This is good. I like how this makes me feel. I like how this connects with me. I feel more free. I feel more relaxed. I feel more peace. That is maybe the result of the text at times, but it's not the goal and it's not the approach we take. The approach we take is, I want to worship and serve and love God, and I want to receive the truth he's revealing to me. I have to seek him. I have to cry out to him, call to him. And I need the Spirit to illuminate the text to me. The Bible is not a collection of good ideas. It is the written word of God. We're not getting the best hits. This is what Jordan Peterson would say, that the Bible it's what stood the test of time. It's what we've held on to, and it's good because it stands on its own feet. And this is just not the way the Bible even stands on itself. It purposes itself to be the words of God. There's a couple of stories in the Bible that really help drive this point home as examples. The first one is the story of God telling Abraham to kill his son. This is a great story that is brought up in apologetic circles. And the reality is that it's problematic if you approach the text as a humanist, because as a humanist, you're coming to the text and saying, I'm going to extract helpful and valuable truths from this text. And when you get to this story, you're like, why would God tell someone to kill their son? Like, this isn't helpful because it doesn't reflect good on God. And it's this question of like, if God told you to kill your son, if God told me to kill my son, would I do it? And this is a problem because we're approaching the text saying, does it stand on its own 2 feet? Instead of coming to it saying, God, you are God, and we're going to receive truth from you and see who you are and trust who you are. We're approaching the text to know you as God. If we do that with this passage, we see that God is a leader who draws us to a place of testing and sacrifice, but that he delivers us from evil. He doesn't bring us to evil. He delivers us from evil. We see the whole story. We see what God was intending to do there, not just the extracted thought of God telling someone to kill his son. God didn't have him kill his son. He actually saved him. Another story that we can look to is the story of the rich young ruler. The rich young ruler comes to Jesus and he says, I want to follow you, or I want to get to heaven. What must I do? And he's followed all the commands. And Jesus says, sell all your possessions and come and follow me. And if we are approaching the text from this humanist, extract truth and organize it and have our theology all straight, then all of a sudden this text becomes confusing. Well, how are we supposed to assume that everyone should sell all their possessions, that possessions are bad, that if we want to follow Jesus, we must have no possessions? Most of us reject that line of thinking, but we're confused by this text and how we approach it. Instead, we must see that God is relationally engaging this man, that he's actually offering him to break free from the bondage that he's in, that he's actually in bondage to this wealth, and that it's actually keeping him. He thinks he's justifying himself, but he's actually kept away from relationship with God because he's unwilling to let go of this wealth. So these texts and many, many others help us understand that the Bible is not trying to reveal the best ideas. It's trying to reveal God, and it's trying to reveal truth, and that he's relationally engaging with us. We must approach the text this way. Otherwise, we're approaching it as humanists, and we're really trusting ourselves, trusting our own intellect in the way we approach the Bible. So let's shift now to talking about some of the obstacles I'm facing right now. The purpose of this channel is to help remove obstacles from your yes to Jesus. And so one of the things I'm going to be doing this year is having guests on, and we're going to talk about what God has called us to do and what are the obstacles we're facing in doing it. So God's been telling me a couple different things. I took some time over the break to go through my journals. I've got 3 of them from 2022. And I only made it, I was working on this for 3 or 4 days, and I only made it through half of the year, hundreds of notes, and was just, as I was reading these notes over again, it's me writing out what God's told me to do, but it's also me writing out what he's spoken to me. And I'm every day talking to God. I'm asking him what he wants to talk about. I'm sharing the problems I'm facing, asking for insight, for wisdom. It says in James 1, if any of you lacks wisdom. And as I was going through and making these notes, I realized that there were these themes where I would come to God with the same problem, multiple times a week, four or 5 times a week, multiple times a month. And he would speak the same thing to me. And at times he would tell me to do something. And then I would come back a couple days later and bemoan the same problem. And he would tell me to do something. And I would come back and bemoan the same problem. And he'd tell me to do something. What I realized was that I wasn't doing what he was telling me to do. Like, for example, in the category of parenting, I'm struggling with frustration with my kids, anger. Got 4 kids. It's a lot. And he's told me, he was telling me over and over and over again, make a clear plan, train your kids, teach your kids, do a better job with structure. He's literally telling me this over and over and over again. And I'm continuing to come to him saying, God, help me, free me. And I'm finding myself realizing that my lack of obedience, of response and sustained response, in the moment I react, in the moment I'm like, yes, Lord, I'm going to do this, but then I don't go and do it. So this inconsistency, this lack of action is where I'm struggling, the obstacle that I'm facing right now in parenting the way God's told me to. Same thing with YouTube. I've struggled a lot this year with trying to get the right idea out there, trying to work really hard on stuff. And I've made a lot of progress even through prayer. And this isn't, I felt the Lord encouraging me. He wasn't upset with me. He was like, you've made a lot of progress this year. But it felt like, okay, I'm not being consistent. I'm not doing what you've told me to do. And it dawned on me, and this is a thought that one of the things that I was talking with him about earlier this year, that I lack a specific ability. And that ability is the ability to choose to do something, whether in response to him or in response to whatever. And to me, I think it has to be in response to him. But you can choose something in your own strength. The ability to choose to do something and then to stick with it in opposition to your feelings, to your desires over time. And I have really struggled. This is like a superpower, I'm convinced. The ability to choose to do something and then just continue to do it. I'm not good at doing the same thing over and over again every day, day after day. That's an act of faith. That's an act of obedience. And God's asking me to do that. He's asking me to build rhythms in my life. That's the obstacle I'm facing right now, is my own sense of feeling in the moment. I'm a humanist. I'm a recovering humanist. How do I separate myself from what I want to do to be able to choose to do what I've chosen to do, which is obeying the Lord, which is walking in rhythms he's given me to do. And not because those things are going to save me or because I'm doing perfect, but even as an act of faith, even as an act of belief and trust in God. I struggle to do that. That's the struggle I'm facing right now. I'm not going to lie. I've been feeling discouraged and overwhelmed at the number of things I have to fix. And that discouragement is definitely an obstacle I'm facing. And I think the key that I found is I just need clarity on what he's asking me to do, and I need clarity on how to do it. And I have to just keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep saying yes with parenting, with this YouTube channel, with money, with our mission work, all kinds of stuff. I just have to keep saying yes. It's kind of impossible in myself, but he's able to make it possible. This whole process of going through my journals was an eye-opener. I suggest if you have a journal, go back and read through even just a month of last year and make some notes, do some reflection. What were the issues you were facing? Did you actually get insight from the Lord and did you not act on it? Or did you not get insight from the Lord? Did you even ask him what he had to say about that issue you're facing? I think that there's a way that we can see in our day, when we're in the moment, we have a hard time reflecting on that day. But when we look back on a whole month or a whole year, we're able to reflect and see, oh, I'm facing the same problem over and over and over again, and I'm sort of stuck in it. And if you're not taking time to hear the Lord, do it. It's really good. Don't worry. Don't overthink it. Just say, God, I need wisdom on this. And then quiet your mind and see if he gives you a scripture. See if he speaks to you. So, final note, let's talk about decisions and whether you make decisions as a humanist or not. I made this video recently, humanist versus Christian, on the topic of decisions. And the point that I was making in that video is that humanism, again, trusts self, whereas Christians are called to trust God. So when it comes to a decision, the question is, why are you making that decision? How are you making that decision? Are you deciding to take a job because you want to, because it seems right to you, because you like the benefits? These decisions are incredibly challenging to make. And as Christians, we're not called to make them apart from God. My main text on this is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, and so in everything, acknowledge him and he will direct your steps. So it's not to say that you have to hear God on everything, but you do need to acknowledge him or know him in everything. So, God, what are you saying about this job? What are you saying about this circumstance? If you make a decision based on it making sense to you, then as soon as it doesn't make sense to you, you regret it or you doubt that decision and you change your mind. This leaves us susceptible to anxiety. It opens us up to making the wrong decision, and it puts us in this position where it's really on us. Our lives are on us. And one of you guys commented in that video saying, how do I know if I'm making a decision as a humanist or as a Christian? Like, how do I look at a decision I've made and said that was a decision as a humanist or a Christian? I'm going to say probably most of your decision making is made as a humanist. That's sort of our default. That's how we've been taught to think, most of us. But here's a simple question that you can answer that will point to whether or not you are making a decision as a humanist or as a Christian. This is the question: whose fault is it if this decision goes south, if it's a bad decision? If it's your fault, if you didn't think through it enough, if you didn't figure it out enough, if you made a bad decision on this process, then you're making a decision as a humanist. You're trusting yourself, your intellect. If instead it's God's fault if a decision goes south, then you are operating in faith. You are operating as a Christian. And what does this look like? Well, if you make a decision to take a job and all of a sudden that job's awful, well, instead of saying, man, that was a terrible decision, if you made that decision in response to God telling you to do it, well, now your attitude towards that decision is not, I made a mistake, but instead, this is God. This is God's leading, and I just don't understand yet. And this is huge. If we are approaching our lives from our own decision making, then we're constantly doubting ourselves. But if we approach our lives in faith, then we can believe that it's God speaking to us. Thanks for watching. If you're new to this channel, check out this video here where I talk about the history of humanism from the garden all the way up to our denominationalism in Christianity today. And yeah, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.